Hey guys, and welcome to yet another episode of Resilient Ratty. Now, for those of you who watched the first episode, must be wondering what Resilient Ratty is because in the first episode, I called this channel Ratty Talks. It's just that I realized after making the video that Ratty Talks is already a channel name which is being used by another channel, and though that channel is not being has not been very active in the past couple of years, I just didn't want an overlap between my channel name and another channel name in case that channel decides to become active again. So that's how Resilient Ratty has come along. And for those of you who are new here, my name is Ratik Datta. I'm currently pursuing my master's in marketing from Purdue University in the US. And this channel is basically a platform for me to talk about my personal, professional, and academic experiences. So today, I want to use this opportunity to talk about the five things that I've learned from the ICC Cricket World Cup final which happened this past Sunday. So, for those of you who don't know what the ICC 50 over World Cup is, it's basically the Cricket World Cup for the 50 over format, which is the most popular format in the game. And for those of you who don't know, cricket has a huge following back home in my home country. And though it's not the national sport, it's considered nothing less than religion back in our country. It's just hands down the most widely watched sport back in our country. So the fact that our country actually made it to the finals was a really big deal, and there was a lot of anticipation and there was a lot of expectation from our team in the final, especially given the fact that Team India had performed spectacularly in this World Cup. So we had so they played a total of 11 games, including the final, and the 10 games before the final, India was absolutely superb. They were just steamrolling over opposition, and more often than not, they had one-sided affairs in terms of matches, and that's why expectations were sky high for this team because this was one of the most dominant World Cup displays, probably the most dominant World Cup displays we've seen since the 2003 and 2007 Australia cricket sides. Sad news for me and all my other fellow Indians and for all of those who support the Indian cricket team was that we unfortunately fell short in the final and Australia went on to win the World Cup. And a huge congratulations to Australia for that because this is their sixth World Cup win, which is a record in itself. And this is absolutely amazing to see the Aussies go about doing their thing. And we'll be talking a little bit more about Australia and their approach towards cricket later when we talk about when we basically talk about the five things that I've learned from this final. So the first thing that I learned from this final is the fact that the law of averages does tend to catch up over a period of time. Uh, like I said earlier, Team India was on a roll. We won 10 out of 10 games before this final, and we were looking absolutely dominant and steamrolling opposition all across the tournament, and including Australia, because the first team that we played in the tournament was actually Australia, and we beat them pretty comprehensively. But unfortunately, the law of averages is something that I strongly believe in because I strongly believe that what goes up must come down. And in the case of India's dominant displays, the dominant display had to end at some point or the other. This has happened with the Argentina football team as well. They had gone 34, 35 games unbeaten, and then they went on to lose to Saudi Arabia in the opener of the FIFA World Cup. But it was better for them to have lost that first game in the FIFA World Cup because they ended up winning the entire tournament later. But for India, the situation flipped upside down because they won all the games up till the final and then they ended up losing the final. And this really demonstrates that the law of averages is truly something which is not to be messed with, and it is something which is it's a very very real thing because it's very rare for a team to go ahead and win 11 games on the trot in a competition as intense and as competitive as a cricket world cup. I know that the Australian team of 2003 and 2007 did manage to do it, but I feel like that's more of an exception rather than the rule. And one thing that I've learned as an economics student is the fact that everything has exceptions, and that 2003 and 2007 Australia team was just an exception, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Second thing that I've learned is actually a lot. There's a lot to learn from the Australian cricket team in this edition of the World Cup because they actually ended up losing their first two games of the tournament, and they were beaten pretty comprehensively by India in the first game. And A lot of people had already started writing the Aussies off from the tournament, saying that they're probably not going to make it to the semi-finals. Though I was very wary of the fact that Australia has an elite mentality when it comes to these knockout tournaments, and that elite mentality came through once again because despite losing the first two games of the World Cup, Australia went on to win the next nine games, including the final, and lift the trophy. That does beg the question of how did they do that exactly? Because it's not easy. Trust me, guys. Having a setback that early in the competition and then coming back from that setback is no easy feat. But it's something that Australia has been able to do so effortlessly, and the fact that they've been able to do it has not even come across as a surprise to most people, and that's because the Aussie mentality is such. It's a thing. It's the stuff of legends. When it comes to cricket, the Australian cricket team really has that elite mentality when it comes to just zoning in and having their entire focus on the next few games and not thinking about the past results. And that's worked in their favor. They've ended up winning the whole thing. Ended up winning the entire tournament. It's been absolutely incredible to see them go about doing their thing. So this brings me to the third point that I've learned from this final, which can very easily be translated to real life as well. And it's the fact that you need not be at your absolute best at all times, but it's important, in fact, it's imperative, crucial even, to ensure that you are at your best during the clutch moments of your life. So what that basically means is, just as an example, there might be a student in who's giving their 10th grade board examination. For those of you who are from India would be familiar what the board examination is. And before you have the board examination, we have the pre-mocks and then the mocks, or the prelim 1, prelim 2, as you whatever your school may want to call it. And it could be that there's a bright student who has not performed exceptionally well in the pre-mocks and the mocks, but has gone on to top in the school in the final board exams. And at the end of the day, whether he or she topped in the pre-mocks or mocks is not what is important. What is important is the fact that he or she ended up topping in the final exam, in the final board exam. So that's what life is all about. It's not about being at your best at all times, because like we discussed earlier, the law of averages is such that being at your best at all times is just impossible. It's just impossible. It's inconceivable to be at your best at all times. So in this case, when you know that you cannot be at your absolute best at all times, it's best to make sure that you are at your best in the most clutch moments of your life. And Team Australia has done that. They lost the first two games, but they ended up winning the next nine on the trot, and they had a dominant display in the final over a team that had been dominant over the course of the entire tournament. So that's what it's all about. It's all about making sure that you can make the most out of the little opportunities that you get. So a lot of people may argue that Australia was not the best team of the tournament, and that title belongs to India, especially given how dominant India had been over the course of the entire tournament right up till the final, whereas Australia had they struggled in the first two games. They also struggled in that game against Afghanistan. It was only because of Maxwell's heroics that they were actually able to pull off that victory, and which is nothing short of amazing. All I can say is that it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who was the more consistent team throughout the tournament. What matters is the team that actually performed on the day that it matters. And that was Australia. And you got to give them credit for that. And of course, that's not to take away the amazing tournament that India has had, and the great pride that all of us Indians and everyone who's a fan of the Indian cricket team has for the country, has for the team. But you just have to give credit where credit is due. Australia just know when to pick their moments, and they just have the knack for performing at the most crucial times possible. And this is not the first time that they've done it. If you look back at the 2015 World Cup, again, it was a similar story when New Zealand was unbeaten throughout the entirety of the 2015 tournament, and they ended up losing to Australia in the final. And this is despite the fact that New Zealand had actually beaten Australia in the group stages of that tournament. So this is not the first time that Australia has gone on to beat a team that was unplayable throughout the entire tournament. They did it in 2015, and now they've done it in 2022 as 2023 as well. And it's just in their DNA. It's just the Aussie DNA. They have it in their blood to never give up and to perform in the absolute clutch moments that a lot of other teams may not necessarily be able to. The fourth thing that I learned from this World Cup final, which can very easily be translated to life, is it's kind of a harsh reality of life where you realize that not every story has a fairy tale ending. It's kind of reminiscent of what Tony Stark said in Avengers Endgame. Everyone wants a happy ending, right? But it doesn't always roll that way. And for a player like Rohit Sharma, who is such an exceptional player, one of the most talented players of his generation, and a phenomenal captain. He's won five IPL titles with Mumbai Indians as a captain. So his captaincy is pretty amazing, to say the least. But unfortunately, this was going to be his last World Cup because he's already 36. So by the time the next World Cup comes in, he'll be 40, and there's not a very high probability that he will be playing that World Cup. So this was expected to be his last World Cup, and he gave it his all. He was absolutely phenomenal. His selfless batting is one of the principal reasons India has done so well in this World Cup, right? All the and including in the final, he was pretty phenomenal in the final as well. Rohit Sharma we all were hoping for Rohit Sharma to get that fairy tale ending where he gets to end his career with a World Cup victory against his name, a 50 over World Cup victory against his name, because in 2011 he was heartbreakingly left out of the Indian squad when India went on to win the World Cup went on to win the World Cup back in 2011. So he's technically never won a 50 over World Cup, and was something that you could see he was very hungry for. And it's just very saddening to see that he's probably, I mean, I could be wrong, and I would love to be wrong in this case, and I would love to see Rohit Sharma play in the next World Cup if he's fit enough to play. I would love to see him play in that World Cup and get his fairy tale ending now, and get his fairy tale ending then. But it seems highly unlikely that we're going to see him in another 50 over World Cup, and that really, it's just, it just brings us to the realization that not all endings are fairy tale like, and that's what happens in life as well. Sometimes you really want something very badly, but just life just has different had but it's just that life has different plans for you, and that's okay. And the reason I say that it's okay is because of the last point, the fifth point that I've learned from this tournament, which brings me to the last point, the final fifth point that I've learned from this World Cup, from this entire edition of the World Cup, and from the final in specific, which can very easily be translated to life. And it's the fact that it's not always about the destination, it's about the journey. Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. And yes, of course, history will have it that we would not be able to proudly say that India was the winner of the 2023 ICC 50 over cricket World Cup. But for the people who watched this World Cup, and for those people for whom this World Cup really mattered, know that India was absolutely fantastic in all departments of the game, whether it was batting, bowling, fielding. They were on top throughout the entire tournament, and those amazing set of performances in the first 10 games is something which will be etched in the mind of every Indian cricket fan until the end of time. And though we may not have won the trophy, we can all sleep easy knowing that Team India gave it their all. The journey and the fabulous memories that we made in that journey along the way is in many ways even more important than the title itself. And those memories is what we're going to take with us till the end of time. There you have it, guys. These were the five things that I learned from the ICC 50 over Cricket World Cup as a whole, and from the final in specific, and something which I feel can very easily be translated not just from not just from a cricketing aspect, but actually to our real life as well. There's a lot that we can learn from this final, from this tournament, from the way Australia has played, from the way India has played, and a lot of life lessons that you learn along the way as well. And I just like doing these kind of I just like doing this kind of analysis about things that I watch or things which I'm passionate about. And in case you like this video and would like for me to make more videos like this in the future, please do not forget to give me a thumbs up. And in case you haven't subscribed already, do make sure that you subscribe to this channel for any future videos. I will be making videos on my time here in the US and at Purdue University in the future as well. And I would love for you guys to tell me what else you would like me to make my videos on. You can watch my first video, which you can see somewhere on the top right or on the top left. I'm not too sure about whether it's the top right or left, but you can see my first video to understand what my background is like, so that you can suggest what kind of videos you would like me to make. And for all the Indian fans out there, for all the Indian cricket fans out there, I know it's a difficult time, but we must support our team doing, because as heartbroken as we are as fans, we cannot even comprehend what the players themselves must be going through. So this is the time where we actually stand together and support our team, and just make sure that they feel loved and they feel proud of the amazing achievements that they've gone ahead in this tournament. Because make no mistake about it, we had the highest run getter in the tournament, we had the highest wicket taker in the tournament as well, and we had three batsmen who scored over 500 runs in this World Cup. So we've done amazingly well. Like I said, we've just steamrolled over all competition before the final. So it's something which is very it's something worth remembering, and definitely something that is one for the history books, even though we may not have won the title. So just remember that. So just remember to keep supporting this team, and let's hope for an ICC trophy soon. I know that it's been a very long wait since we won our last ICC trophy, but we just gotta keep supporting our team, and through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad, because it's a team that has given us so much of happiness. So it becomes our responsibility to support them during low times as well. And yeah, that's about it, guys. It was nice talking about something that I'm so passionate about, and I shall see you guys soon. Until then, bye bye. And it's hands down the wide way to talk about the five things that I've learned from the ICC World Cup, from the I from five